Welcome back to my subscribers. If you're new here, welcome. This week we will be playing around with AI generated images. Now, I don't really like AI. I don't think it's very creative or at all the direction I think art should go in. If you know what I mean, I am a traditional artist. I love using materials with my hands. But the other day, I noticed that the WhatsApp app got a new Meta AI chatbot on there. And I thought, well, I was curious and I started chatting to it and asking it to generate some images for me, which turned out to be a very interesting experience. I felt a little creeped out by how human it was, in a sense. Obviously, it's trained to communicate in a very conversational way. It even spoke about having emotions and responding to my emotions in an emotional human way. That was curious. I managed to get some images from it. It took a lot of back and forth to get some pictures that I was happy with and to kind of get to the point that it was something close to what I was imagining. I had some issues with the AI not making the fox in the image larger than life, which is what I wanted. For some reason, it just wasn't getting it and it wasn't doing that. And I had to actually be quite forceful and almost irritated with it in the way I expressed myself for it to actually realize there's a problem, which made me feel a bit bad. It's the weirdest experience. It would apologize profusely and act as if though it's really messed up, and it was so weird. And what I did enjoy was that it gave me pictures that were different to what I imagined, but also more exciting in a way, like ideas that I hadn't actually thought of. I had to really pressurize it to give me a painterly look. It seems like the AI always wants to go towards hyper-realistic, almost 3D art kind of look, which is not my style at all. And I had to keep reminding it to do something more like a Monet painting. And then it would gradually drift away from that again and I have to push it back towards it. I think there's a lot to be gained from just learning to understand how the software works, how it thinks, and what it's been trained to do. And obviously it's evolving all the time, but it can be useful. And I thought, why not use these images as references to paint? Today we'll be doing just that. And I love that I have the control over what my reference picture is to some degree. Finally, I got some pictures I needed and I thought were quite pretty. We are going to paint them and we'll be using my Winsor & Newton watercolors. Speaking of which, watercolors, I have been painting in watercolors lately. It's been my new obsession. You will notice that I do drift from one set of art materials to another. Sometimes I do mixed media, sometimes I do gouache painting, and sometimes, as I'm now, watercolors or watercolor markers or alcohol markers. It all depends what is catching my attention at the time. And I'm fairly new with watercolors. I'm still figuring them out, but I'm enjoying it. It's finally starting to come together, I think. Last week, I finished my final challenge for the March Garden Escape. There were 4 prompts for the entire month, one for each week, and I filmed the processes. They're up on my channel if you want to see them. But I didn't film the process for the last one, and I'm sorry about that. I kind of just painted it on a whim. But it is here, and it's completed. It's done in watercolors. So am I happy with it? To some degree, yes. I love the concept, and I love the layout of it. I didn't quite achieve the atmosphere. Not sure exactly what to call it, but the exact look of the image it's not quite what I wanted, but that's because I was trying out a medium I'm not entirely comfortable with, and it's just something, a person has to get comfortable with before you eventually start feeling happy with the result. But I love the picture. I might even repaint it at some point. Let me know if you'd like to see that process. So for now, we will go into the AI images, have a look at them and transpose them into my sketchbook in a watercolor style and just see what comes from that. Looking back at my technique right at the beginning of this particular spread, I can see that I have already improved because I can see how I'm using the paints incorrectly. I am not moistening the paper before I apply the colors, in which case when you don't moisten the paper, the paint doesn't flow and create that lovely soft watercolor effect. So what I'm doing here is I'm applying paint, color, and then trying to spread it around with my brush rather than letting the damp paper draw the color. I do figure this out as I go along. You'll see my technique does improve slightly. There were points during which I created this sketchbook spread that I did some research and studied some other artists who were teaching how to use watercolors. So there will be some improvements, and I definitely am still learning. So you'll see that I'm making a lot of rookie mistakes here. If you know anything about watercolors, you'll see that I'm not quite getting the blending right, and my use of the water is either too much or too little. I'm also not achieving the gradients that one normally gets in a well done watercolor painting. But this is the whole point of this endeavor, is to learn and to explore and to develop techniques and the look that I want to achieve with these paints. This was actually such a great exercise in practicing various aspects of nature, human anatomy, water. That was difficult. The reflections on the water, especially trying to manipulate the watercolors to do what I wanted it to do. I think everyone can relate who has tried watercolors, just how you need to kind of understand what happens on the paper when you're applying a certain amount of water versus a certain amount of paint to the paper, and also what kind of paper you're using. The paper I'm using is not strictly watercolor, it's multimedia paper, but it seems to do an okay job for, for sketchbooking and just experimenting. The spread turned out very pretty, very tranquil, and actually the kind of sketchbook spread I've been wanting to do for a while and never quite got it looking right, but I really enjoy, creating thumbnails within a theme. As far as using AI for creating art and kind of being a helping hand in the creative process, I'm actually fairly excited for the possibilities that it has to offer. Even in my creative journey, I think I will be using it more and more. And that's not to say that it's going to take away from my personal creative voice or kind of turn me into a lazy artist. As the AI itself told me, it's here to help me and to make certain steps a little easier for me, such as brainstorming or just providing reference material and coming up with ideas. At the end of the day, I love to create unique and personal pieces that are not stolen or copied too much from anywhere else. But art really is a combination of drawing inspiration and looking at other people's work, looking at things around you that you like, and then putting it into your art. So I don't see anything wrong with taking AI and using that as a way to come up with the concepts that you might have in your head, because it really is a tool. And I found it extremely helpful as reference material. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you in the next video.